Hey everybody, KC here. So today on Offbeat, I have a conversation with Mark Greaney, who is the author of the Gray Man series of novels, a bunch of other books as well. He's got a new book out next week. It's called The Chaos Agent. It is fabulous. I loved it. Total page turner. And as I explained to him during our conversation, there are a bunch of times in this book it absolutely scared the crap out of me. It's all about AI. It's a spy thriller. It's really, really well written. Incredible plot, great characters. I think you're going to love it, and I think you're going to love my conversation with Mark Greaney. Mark Greaney, welcome back to Morning Newsbeat. I appreciate you doing this.
Well, thank you for having me back. Good to see you.
The new book is The Chaos Agent, a Gray Man novel, and total page turner. So I have to tell you, this book's more than any book I think of yours that I've read, and I've now read them all. At least everything in the Gray Man series. This book totally scared the crap out of me.
Well, thank you, I guess.
So let me be, because I don't know what to give away and not to give away. So let me ask you to set it up for the folks who are watching this right now who have not read the book. How would you pitch it?
Yeah, sure. So it's the 13th book in my Gray Man series, but it's a standalone novel. You don't have to read anything else. And it's about a guy named Court Gentry, who's a former CIA paramilitary officer who then was targeted for assassination by the CIA. We're 13 books in. He's kind of back with them in a sort of an agent role, a little contract sort of a role. And he's just trying to live his life quietly in Central America and stay away from all the people who've been after him. And very quickly, he is targeted for assassination by a mysterious entity. And it starts a cat and mouse game around the world. And it turns out that this same entity is assassinating the world's leaders in the fields of robotics and artificial intelligence. So he and his cohorts learn of a plot to create a revolutionary new weapon that will completely change the face of war. So they're trying to stop that and unsolve the mystery of who's behind it.
So how much of what you wrote is accurate and exists, and how much is sort of speculation or we're on the edge of it at this point?
So no technology in the book nothing in the book is science fiction. It's all either existing or emerging technology. Having said that, I maybe did some things with it that haven't been done yet, or if they have, we don't know it. Yeah, we hope. A large language model, artificial intelligence agent, I basically turn into its own intelligence service, and I give this algorithm access to offshore bank accounts and the ability to go on the dark web and hire assassins and plot its own overthrow, socially engineer human beings to do its bidding. And I don't know that that's actually happening in the world, but the technology is there. And all the robots that are in the book, it's a book about humans, about spies, but there's a lot of lethal autonomous weapons, which is another word for killer robots. And all of those are either existing right now or in prototype, or there's a version of them that maybe hasn't been weaponized, but I weaponize it in the book. So it's all very, very legit.
Is it your sense, based on your research, that let me ask a question this way. Is there enough concern out there about AI achieving sentience, which means it can sort of think on its own and act on its own?
Yeah, so this idea of artificial general intelligence or artificial general super intelligence, which is the sentience, it is a question that people have. You don't want to make it think that you don't want to think that AI is going to think like a human. It's not. It's completely remorseless. It's completely, doing what it's set out to do. But the ability of these deep neural networks that these machine learning models use means that they can actually rewrite their own code and pull themselves up by their bootstrap, teach themselves things that we humans haven't taught it or haven't asked it to do. There is the possibility that somewhere down the road, a lethal autonomous weapon will realize, their job is self-preservation, and the weak link in this chain are human beings. So, without sounding like science fiction, we are quickly approaching this in the real world. All the leaders of the artificial intelligence labs are all saying that they're scared about how fast things are moving in the field.
Well, and as we record this, the story popped over the last 24 hours that there's concern in Washington, D.C. about Russia having some sort of weapon that could create an existential threat to the United States and our allies, and they didn't know what it was, and that has something to do apparently with space, and it may have something to do with nuclear. But as we
Yeah.
record this, they don't know exactly what it is. And my first thought is, have you read the book? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that could it be something like that? And again, I don't want to let fiction necessarily dictate how I think about this stuff, but I couldn't help but think about that this morning when that story broke.
Yeah, it's that is a possibility. I think it's some sort of space nuclear weapon or a nuclear platform in space. And I think the real danger, and kind of this is the one reason I'm not too scared about it, is the danger is that it will destroy U.S. satellites. But the way that satellites are, and there's so many of them, you start blowing up satellites in outer space and you start destroying your own satellites because of debris fields and the way that they circulate. So hopefully Russia has more reasons not to use that than they have to use that, but who knows these days.
Yeah. And I was reading a story in, I guess it was in Politico, and they were talking about the government's Office of Science and Technology Policy. And they talk about, placing a large emphasis on safety and getting voluntary commitments from top AI companies and trying to achieve safe and or secure AI. And and again, as I was reading this story, I was thinking to myself, you can want to do all those things, but you know, I mean, listen, there's I think it's not giving anything away in the story. There may be flaws in the programming, but the flaws in the programming are created by people who are flawed
Hmm.
and or corrupt and or whatever word you want to use.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that, we're going in this direction, that we're going to have weapons that operate at machine speed. The human will be taken out of the loop. And we do have, as you said, there a lot of people are trying to deal with this ethically and with laws and with regulations. The only danger with that is China may not be following these laws or regulations. So the moment our adversary is able to fight wars where every machine can make 2,000 decisions a second and humans cannot. AI in fighter plane simulators have completely destroyed real American Air Force pilots. Like 15-0, the human doesn't get a shot off. Artificial intelligence, can be completely aggressive all the time. They're not worried about their wife or kids and ever seeing them again. They're not worried about G forces, and they're able to, just there's just a tactical and operational overmatch. So, it's going in that direction. And if the Chinese have it and we don't, we're going to kind of wish we had it.
Do you share some of the concerns of people in your business, the writing business, that somebody could go on AI and ask somebody to say, write me a novel about the Blue Man who's an assassin in the style of Mark Greaney, and suddenly your intellectual property can in some ways be appropriated much more easily. I know there are a lot of
Yeah.
there's a bunch of lawsuits out about that.
Yeah, there are some lawsuits. I'm not part of them. Several of my books have been used. And basically, what happened is these large language models were fed bootleg copies of thousands and thousands of thousands of authors. So it's able to sort of generate something. And I've looked at that, and it doesn't look very, very sophisticated. And so my fear is a lot of people are going to worry or are going to just say AI is no big deal because look how it screwed this up. But AI has performed at human levels on the SAT and the bar exam and the GRE. So it is very, very rapidly moving and very sophisticated. And people ask me all the time, it's like, are you really upset about AI taking your intellectual property? And I've been writing this book and researching this book. I'm always kind of like, yeah, that's not the worst thing AI is going to do to me. It's like it's kind of hard to get too agitated about that when you're thinking about a world-ending event.
Um, so when you were in your process from coming up with this book, which is does build on a little bit of what happened in the last book. Now, the last book sort of anticipated the war in Ukraine.
Mm.
To a
Yeah, I think it had started when I was working on it, but I did have to sort of imagine where the war would be 1 year out, which was very scary to do, but I think it was pretty close.
So as you're working on this book, were you sort of was it your sense that AI would sort of occupy the place that it does, both in terms of science and technology, and even in popular culture? You use the word entity, which I don't think is a word that you use in the book, but
Hmm.
that's the word they use in the last Mission Impossible movie, which has some vague
Hmm.
similarities.
Hmm.
I don't know if that
Yeah.
worried you or not. Uh,
Yeah.
it did.
No, it didn't really worry me.
Oh,
Like
okay.
when I saw it, I was like, oh wow, they're doing the sort of so it's we've been on the cusp of it for a while. And as a writer, it would be great if you could predict the future, but it's also good to, not screw up and step on your toes. So I was looking at something that was expanding really, really quickly. And there was a lot of, I'm looking at the Elon Musks of the world and these private AI research labs and thinking, golly, there could be a story in there. And that's all I did. And yes, it's bigger now than it was a year ago. A year from now, it'll probably be even bigger. So I don't think there is a bad time to write a book about artificial intelligence.
Did you think it would be as big now as it has turned out to be when you were working on the book?
Not really. I'm a big news hound and I grew up with the news and I'm always looking at things. And so I'll see like one article about something and be fascinated with it. And that turns into a book. And by the time the book comes out, there's hundreds of articles on it. Artificial intelligence is so pervasive now. And, just the algorithms in your phone, we're all being sort of socially engineered by AI 24 hours a day. So I saw it getting bigger, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's just every third article you see online is about it.
Do you have a sense? I mean, you did something in this book that you I don't think you've done before, which is sort of set up the next book. I mean,
Mhm.
we at least know what the beginning of the next book is going to be to
Correct.
some
Yeah.
degree. Do you have a sense, obviously not asking you to give it away, but do you have a sense now, if you got the war in Ukraine right and you got AI right, do you have a sense at the moment what that next thing is going to be that is that you can kind of tap into that will be bigger a year from now than it is today?
There's emerging threats, maybe not for a Gray Man book, but I do other stuff
Right.
as well. And I mean, if you wanted to pin me down right now and say, what's a thing that like, you know, keeps you up at night? 90% of all the most advanced semiconductor chips that are needed for everything that we do now are made in Taiwan, which is 100 miles from China, and it's an island that China has vowed to take over. 0% of these chips are made in the United States. And by the way, China makes 0% themselves. So, as far as a game changing element that could happen anywhere on Earth, there's nothing bigger than China and Taiwan and the conflict there. So, I'm looking at that carefully. It's weird that I haven't done a book about it already, but that's it'll probably come out at exactly the right time, unfortunately.
Um, or fortunately, depending
Or
on
fortunately,
what.
yeah.
The yeah, I guess Taiwan Semiconductor, which is the first or second biggest manufacturer of those chips, is actually planning on building is a facility, I think in Nevada or Arizona, but it could take years to get that thing,
Right.
get it up to snuff.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is the place. They make some in South Korea, but the equipment used to make these chips, that they actually use in the factories is only made in Holland and the U.S. and Japan. So it's very, the supply chain for it is very, very tight and it's very, very dangerous.
Yeah. The one of the things I really liked about this book too is you brought back a lot of familiar faces. It seemed to be almost more than in some of the other books. I mean, there's a lot of names
Yeah.
and faces that those of us who've read all the books are familiar with. Was
Mm.
that as a writer, was that sort of was that a goal? I mean, or did that sort of does it just sort of evolve as you're working?
It was pretty organic. Like Donald Fitzroy, who's in the first couple books, and I think he's peaked it, he's peeked his head in later in the series. I used him just because I was thinking, of a character like him, and I was like, oh well, what's he doing? Let's use him. I wrote several books with Tom Clancy and continued the Jack Ryan series. And when I was writing those books, there's such a big cast of characters that are all very, very beloved so beloved that they sort of have to be in every book. So you have to find a role for 15 different characters. And so with the Gray Man series, I didn't want to get stuck into that, even though that works great in Clancy series. I wanted my series to be about this guy and the camera is on his shoulder most of the time. And so these characters will come and go in the series. They don't have to be in every book. And this is just a book where Zach and Zoya and Matt and Chris Travers and Don Fitzroy and these people that have been in several of the other books, they all sort of come here for a need. They won't all be in the next one.
I was waiting to see if somebody was going to show up from Burner, which
Yeah.
is a non-series book,
Yeah. Yeah.
but didn't happen. But I kept like Burner nearby, so if a name came up, I didn't know, I would have a reference point to go to. Are
Funny.
you writing
Yeah.
any more non-series books? Because I love Burner.
Yeah. So Sentinel is my next release. It'll come out in June of this year. It's the second in the Josh Duffy series. And yeah, that comes out in June. I'm still editing it. So it's really down to the wire. I'm promoting this book and editing that one. And then as soon as I finish with this and finish with the book tour, I'm going to start on Gray Man 14, which will be out this time next year.
2 books a year. That's a lot.
It's too much. I'm not doing it this year. I'm only writing 1 book this year. Last year I did 2 books, but the second book has made it into February. I'm still working on it.
Yeah. I know that I've interviewed Ace Atkins here a number of times, and I think that was he didn't come right out and say it, but I think the reason he stopped doing the Spencer series is he was writing 2 books a year, and that was just after 10 years, that just became a killer pace.
It's super tough, especially when you've written, like, this is my 24th novel. Sentinel will be my 25th novel since 2009. And it's tough to come up with so much new stuff so fast. I can come up with new stuff if you give me a year to do some research and do location research and read a bunch of books and, to sit alone and stare at the wall. I can come up with stuff. But if I've got to, crank out 3,000 words a day, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Well, and not only you have to research them and write them, you then have to come talk to people like me.
Yeah, this is actually a fun part of it. When right before you start the publicity thing, you've always written something else in the meantime. So it's always kind of panic inducing. It's probably surprising to people, but it's like, I've got to talk about that book I wrote. What's it about?
Right.
And because your brain just moves on. And so once you've done a dozen or 2 dozen interviews, then you're like, okay, I can talk about this book, thankfully. But it's nerve-wracking at first, but then it becomes fun.
Well, we appreciate you doing it. I'll hold it up again. The book is The Chaos Agent by Mark Greaney. It's the newest Gray Man novel. I'm going to have to ask you, is there going to be a sequel to the Netflix movie?
They've written another script, so I hope they announce something pretty soon. Steve McFeely wrote the screenplay to the second one. I don't know if there's other screenwriters that are looking at it, but I'll probably find out the same time everybody else does on Twitter, just like the last time.
Well, Mark Greaney, thank you so much again for doing this. Good luck on the book tour. Good luck with the book. And hopefully I'll get a chance to do this with you again down the road.
Yeah, thanks, sir. I enjoyed it.
Take care.